Hey everybody, this is Diabolus Nemesis for J Solo Project for 2018. And what a year so far. And it's going really well. I decided to do a video for 2018 which is a rig rundown. And I'm going to go through my guitars first and foremost, just to show you what guitars I play, what tunings I mainly play in, and what I don't play anymore, and what I will be looking at getting in the near future. But let's go through the guitars first, shall we? I'm just rambling on a little bit. First and foremost, this guitar I call Nixon. You might not recognize him. When I first got him, I had this, I think it was this skull wrap put on it. I mean, not put on it, but that came with it. I actually won this guitar. And, you know, this guitar actually is my main guitar. And the wrap started to lift off, and it started to get a little beat. So, I decided to take the wrap off, and I decided to keep it stock as much as possible. This is an ESP LTD EX50. This is a 2015 model. I think the born on date was the March 2015, and this one was an Indonesian model, and I got this one at the end of 2016. And this is my main drop B guitar. I haven't played any other tunings with this guitar. I only just play this one in drop B. So yeah, there's not much to really say. You just get one of these off the shelf mainly, and yeah, that's I had to take the neck off, so I had a problem putting the screws back in. So I've got to be careful with this one. But that's a problem with the Indonesian guitars. The screws don't really match up really nicely with the bolt. I mean, the bolts don't really match up nicely, unfortunately, when you put them back in. Once you take them out, and you're fucked up anyway. But yeah, but this one's my drop B. I mean, this one's made out of basswood, maple neck rosewood fingerboard, 22 XL frets, or XJ frets I should say. Yeah, I think it's a 24.75 inch scale. Pickups on this one are the bone stock ESP LTD LH150s, I think. Yeah, the 150s. I disconnected the tone through the capacitor. I disconnected the capacitor from the tone, so it's just a dummy knob on the second knob, and I just have a volume. And I've got my eye-rings for my carabiner system, for my strap system. I find the carabiner system very reliable, and I actually shifted the carabiner from down here to up here because it just keeps it balanced. But I start off, I mean, I do a lot of my rhythm guitar tracks with this one, and that guitar is actually pretty cool. Then when I get into my drop A stuff, I used to play drop A on this one for ages, but now I'm playing drop A on this guitar, but I'm thinking about retiring this one. The reason why is that this guitar, it doesn't hold much weight to it. And the neck is uncomfortable on it for starters, because it's poorly designed. The appointments on this guitar is not exactly the greatest. Like, it goes fat and it goes skinny. And considering that this guitar is a Chinese guitar, I only got this guitar for like $100, and you see them sold. You see these actually sold for about fucking heaps, and you know, I find it really offensive when you buy this for $100 off Trade Me. They go for like, I think I saw one is trumped up as twice the price, which is fucking ludicrous. Yeah, I mean, just playing this thing, it's fucking uncomfortable. So I'm going to be going to a different guitar very soon. But this guitar is pretty cool, even though the graphic is pretty cool. But I mean, for the drop A stuff, it's not the greatest. But you know, I'm gonna probably just keep this guitar as a backup, or or just something that, you know, I just have knocking around in the studio or in my space. But that's my drop A guitar. I only play 1-2 songs on it anyway. My secondary drop B is one that you've all known for quite a while. I've had this guitar for such a long time that I'm not really debating on whether I should retire her or not, but you've come to know her as Vixen, and you know, you can see there she's been dinged up. You can see some dings there, and see that nasty little crack in there and shit, which is a permanent thing. That's a permanent reminder that Raven was in the band. She damaged the guitar, but I fixed it. I got it fixed by Guitar Garage through Trevor in Tauranga. And you can tell that she's been played a lot, because once these were white and now they're just scummy. And I'm an abuser of my guitar, but I'm thinking of keeping this guitar as a studio guitar, because you know, once you have a guitar that's beaten to shit, you know, you kind of want to look after it a little bit more. But you know, when the guitar gets injured, they start losing their timbre a little bit. But this guitar is, you know, pretty it's a pretty cool guitar. My drop F sharp guitar. This one was my drop A guitar for ages, but now this is my drop A guitar, my drop F sharp guitar, I should say. This one is I think it's a Korean copy of a Dean ML, and this guitar is surprisingly light. This guitar is very light. I only got this guitar for like $80, and this guitar has been in my arsenal now since, I don't know, Christmas 2014. Yeah, around about that. And the neck on this is very thin, which I like, and the flatboard's very flat. And this guitar is actually not so bad. I mean, for a cheapie, it's surprisingly well good, and it's reasonably, you know, well played. And I had this guitar in drop A for ages, but now I have this in drop F sharp, and you notice that my string gauge on this guitar is actually surprisingly insane. And I don't have any unwound strings on this guitar anymore. I think the string gauge on this one is 26, 36, 46, 56, 64, 74. And that's my string gauge for this guitar. Still got my ring hooks. I don't know what the body is made out of. I think it's made out of either very light basswood, or I don't know. Yeah, very light basswood, I think. And the guitar that started J Solo Project, well, yeah, the guitar that started J Solo Project, I should say, is this guitar. I've retired her, but this is what you call old girl now. I don't have any decent strings on her, but I'm going to put some strings on her again one day. I might play her again. But I had this guitar in drop B, I mean, this guitar has been through the fucking wars. This guitar has been gigged, smashed, glued back together, refretted like a mad amount of times, had the pickups replaced, been filled in with plaster, in the cavity area. It's had bits of wood hunked out of it, and it's been abused, but this guitar is still pretty reasonable. I might get her fixed. I might actually strip her down to bare wood and just spray paint it, or just repaint it at some stage, but I don't know yet. But I got this guitar back in 2007. I was in Death Bear Hate at the time, and I was playing Jackson for ages, and then I went from Jackson to BC Rich, and then I went from BC Rich back to Jackson, and then from Jackson to ESP. And I think I was playing the ESPs probably shortly after I left that band, and I was in JCTAR when I first got this guitar, and I painted it camo, and then I was in Sacred Sanctum for a little while, and I think that band didn't go anywhere. Then I was in Catastrophic Solace, and that one didn't go anywhere, and J Solo Project started off with this guitar. But at the time, it was painted in this bluey, goopy color that I painted for a while. So I might make this guitar into a drop A guitar, or a drop F sharp guitar again. I don't know. I haven't really got a clue yet. But this guitar has been throughout the first album, through some of the demos on the second album, and it's done a few shows. But I'm gonna probably get this one. I'm gonna probably refire this guitar back up one of these days. So who knows? But anyway, let's go through my basses. Anyway, I might as well show you my basses while I'm at it. This bass was the start of the basses with J Solo Project. It was all throughout the first album, throughout the demos of the Retaliation precursors, and it was on the demo of this album, the album that I'm currently working on. And this bass was pretty cool for ages. This was a drop B bass and a drop A bass. I only just needed one bass. And then I played an E standard for a little bit, but this bass has done its run. And then I had a friend in Wellington. Well, I still have a friend in Wellington who knew how to fix guitars, and who did work as well, and who knew how to make guitars. And he said to me, how about I make you a bass? He had a buddy from another project lying around, and he had a neck, and he made this neck. He made this first neck for me, and it was too fat. And then he made another neck, and it was just right. And he gave me this other neck instead. And then I've been playing this bass now since 2016. So to Josh, thank you, man. I've still got the bass, and it's still working good. He put in these jazz bass pickups, and he did the usual with it. But this bass actually sounds really big, and it's really heavy. I mean, it's pretty fucking heavy. But I like the color work that he did on it. It's actually really nice. So that's my bass. Sometimes I come out on a song called Surreal in Motion, and sometimes I play bass on a song called Your Chemicals. But aside from that, you know, it's a pretty cool setup. Pretty cool bass. Next up, we're going to go through my amp and how I have that jacked up. So stick up for part 2 of the vid. Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of the video. This is where I go through my amp and cabinet and I'll show you what sort of sounds I get tone wise now. The head I'm running is a Durand MG120TR solid valve state head. It's got a solid state power section, and it's got a tube preamp section, which is it's only just got one tube in it. It's got a Shugwang 12AX7, I think, which is an ECC83 preamp tube, and I run it in a more solid state section now. Instead of running just everything through the front end, I have certain effects that go into the front end, and I have the rest going through the effects loop. And I mostly use the boost. I usually use the boost for my cleans, and then I just EQ everything. I try not to have too much low end. I have as much low end I can, but I try and keep a mid-range approach. So sometimes I use the clean, and sometimes I use the boost just to thicken it up a little bit if I really need to. I use a distortion pedal, which I'll show you on part 3. But for the most part, I keep everything clean on the head, and I just use a distortion pedal to change the channel. When I'll tell you a story about this head, actually. The day I got this, and I got my cabinet, when I got my cabinet, I accidentally popped a resistor in this, and I took it to I think a dude named Jarrett at Rectified Amps in Wellington, and he said to me that this has kind of got the similar approach to this is a sort of like a clone of a JCM 900 apparently. I don't know if it's true, but it's kind of got that sound to it. I mean, clean wise at least anyway. I don't use the distortion section on this at all. Even though it does have distortion, and the distortion, for me, it doesn't sound what I need it to sound, so I just use a distortion pedal for the most part. But it's a good head. I mean, it's done me very well. It's fucking loud as shit, though. I mean, Jesus Christ. But it's done me very well. The cabinet I'm running is a old school Marshall 8412, and it's made out of MFC. The shell's made out of MFC, which I think is chipboard, and it's just got your standard grill, but the speakers I'm using are the G12L 35 watt speakers, which are the stock ones that come inside this cabinet anyway. However, if I ever was to change them, I'm more partial to the Celestion K100s. That's my favorite speaker. I'm also really partial to the vintage 30s, however, but considering if I ever had to change the impedance, if I ever had to change the speakers, I'd have to really match the impedance, because it's an 8 ohm cabinet and my head's 8 ohms as well, so they have to match. I get a lot of shit from people saying that I kind of really destroyed the grill of my cabinet by painting it, but to be honest, I don't really care. I mean, it does what it does, and if it looks really gnarly, then it looks gnarly, so fucking what. However, I'm thinking of getting a grill for this later on down the line. And I'm thinking of putting a permanent grill on this, and actually taking the badge off and putting the badge on the new grill. But that's neither here nor there at the moment. I mean, it does what it does at this stage, and I'm happy with what I'm using it for at this point. So, the cabinet is doing its job, and it's doing what it's doing respectively, and I'm happy that I'm using this cabinet. What I'm using to mic it up is a couple of SM57s, and I got these secondhand like ages ago, and they sound pretty cool. I actually tops actually broke off both of them, so I had to get them replaced. But I can get them. You can get the tops anywhere for nothing. And the stands I'm using are just a couple of generic stands, which they stand on. They do their job very well. But I'm thinking of getting some smaller stands, so I can just mic up the two bottom ones instead of using the big ones. Because I like using the two bottom speakers for recording, and I usually use the top ones for the live. But yeah, that's basically my rig. Settings wise, yeah, those are my settings. If you have the same head, feel free to use them. Yeah, cables, I've got a Damasio, a Joyo, and a no-name fuck-off brand. And the speaker cable is, I think I got a cheap speaker cable from the rock shop. I think it's a rock cable. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Never mind the Jägermeister bottle. I had Jägermeister when my partner was here. But yeah, that's my setup. How I describe my tone. I describe my tone, like distortion sound kind of close to a PV5150. Even though I don't own a 5150. I would love to own a PV5150. And my cleans are kind of big, like a Marshall sound. So, if I ever chose the two amps that I like to use, I would like to use a PV5150 for my distortion, and a Marshall JCM 800 or 900 for my cleans, if I really wanted to. That's in the near future, but I get a lot of people saying to me that I should just either use an Axe FX or a Line 6 or a Kemper. Personally, I'm too old school for that. Even though I'm 36 this year, but I grew up on the principle of using analog equipment and using analog gear and using an actual guitar amp instead of using a rack module. Kind of seems more fitting, even though I do have a rack module in repair at the moment, which is a Line 6 Pod Pro, which is an old school rack module. Even still, I prefer using a guitar amp as opposed to using a rack module. Like if I ever build a fly rig, then yeah, I'll use my rack module whenever I get the chance to, because that has my tone print anyway. But yeah, at the same time, I like using my head mostly, for the most part. Yeah, would I go back to using the tube section though? Nah, I would not use the tube section, because to be honest, the preamp tube kind of makes it sound a little raspy, and it kind of makes it sound a little grim. Yeah, for ages I was running everything direct into my interface, and when I first started J Solo Project, I was running my guitar pedal board direct into the back of my computer for ages, and I was tracking everything in mono, and it was pretty grim. Actually, it sounded like shit, but it was what it was. I mean, a lot of it was post-processing. I mean, trying to, make it sound nice. But, now that I'm using a more solid guitar tone, it sounds a lot better. I mean, I don't really care about the wattage, basically, but I like the sound of this head. I mean, I like the sound of the head mostly, and I like the sound of the cabinet too. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about the Two Notes torpedo system. I mean, if I was to use the Two Notes torpedo, I would use it for a live rig. I mean, for a fly rig. I mean, like if I was using my Line 6 Pod Pro, I would most probably use that with the Two Notes torpedo or a DI, and just run that as a DI system. And I'll probably have a 4-channel switching system, and I'll most probably will have wah, my whammy, and some basic effects for that. But that'll be like a fly rig scenario. Wireless. I am looking at getting a wireless this year. I'm on the market for a wireless system at this point. Because I'm running everything via cable at this stage, and running a cable is very restrictive, and you're basically tied to the pedal board too much, and you don't get the opportunity of running around a little bit. So I'm looking at getting a wireless this year. I'm probably looking at getting something from either Sennheiser if I really went for a last option, I would go Line 6. Even though I've heard that Line 6 have up their game in the wireless department. But there are good wirelesses and there are shit wirelesses, so I might look at getting something through Line 6. I have no idea at this stage. I mean, I got told that I should go to PV, and looking at the PV stuff, because I've heard PV are good, but I've heard bad things about the 6505 MH when they first released it. And I mean, yeah, they may have fixed it now, but it's given them a bit of a sore reputation. So, as for me using something like a PV 6505 MH, I heard some really bad rumors about it. Like, I heard the rumor that it was it had this nasty high end. Well, not this high end. It had this nasty hiss where I think where it wasn't able to be rectified, and I found out that it was because the Chinese factory was using non-PV specified parts. And PV kind of got a bit of a backlash for not doing anything about it. I saw a video about this on YouTube, and I also got suggested that I should go to Mesa. And Mesa makes some great amps. They make some great amps, and I've played Mesa over the years too. Back in a couple of previous bands a while ago. And the previous band I was in, I was using a Mesa Dual Rectifier, and that was a fucking awesome head. I love that. I love that amp. And I heard a thing called the Mesa Cab Clone, and they got, a lot of people, including the likes of Andertons and Spectre Media Group, Glenn Fricker, namely, did a review of the Mesa Cab Clone, and it sounded like shit. I mean, for a load box, it sounded pretty grim. So, if I ever was to run this direct into my interface, I think I would either go with the likes of the Two Notes, or I would either go with the likes of, if I could ever find one, if they're still around, like a THD hot plate or a Rivera rock crusher. I mean, those three are the best. As for the Mesa cab clone, yeah, for a load box, if I ever was to get a load box, I'd probably avoid the Mesa because I've heard bad things about it. And considering the fact that Mesa actually flew some dude out to Anderton's and said to them, "Oh, you're using it wrong," it kind of made them look like ISIS. So, I mean, I'm not bagging on Mesa or anything, but I mean, for that little unit to cause that much trouble, I'm just gonna avoid the Mesa stuff. I'm just gonna avoid Mesa in the future because if they're gonna come up with that tactic, then sorry. But I think if I ever was to go to PV, I would just get something old school, or probably just avoid the MH series, the mini head 6505, because of that problem. If I ever was to get a head, a decent head, I would probably look at getting the 6505, or I'll probably search out a PV 5150, and I'll probably search out a Marshall as well for the cleans in the near future. That's if I ever wanted to go tube, and I would probably get rid of my distortion pedal and just run an AB box. But then again, that's a preference for the near future. Who knows at this stage? I'm not really looking at changing my head at this point, but in the near future, I might do. If this thing ever decides to shit itself, or if I ever have any problems in the near future with this. I call this amp the HMS Sinister. The reason why I call it the HMS Sinister is because fucking look at it. I mean, it sounds sinister as well. So I mean, it sounds pretty fucking loud. I mean, it blows my fucking face off every time I play it. Even at a low volume, it still sounds fucking good. Yeah, it sounds freaking amazing. But anyway, I'm just rambling on now. Check out for part 3 where I go through my pedal board and I go through my effects and I go through all my other bits and bobs. Cheers. Welcome to part 3 of the video. My effects board and the pedals that I use. Well, this is going to be very complicated for some, and it'll probably just whoosh over someone's head faster than a jet flying somewhere. But I'm going to try and keep it as simple for some of you people. But aside from the obvious, we're going to go through my pedal board. Now, I have it broken down into 2 segments. I have a front end section, and I now have a rear end section, which is usually the best way to run a pedal board now. And I'm only just new to running this sort of setup, but I've been running the similar type of setup for the last few years. I mean, I had it segregated for a long time, and for ages I thought, oh yep, it's gonna be cool, but now it's time I should run it into two different segments, because now that I've bypassed my preamp section, I'm using my distortion section as a preamp, as opposed to running it into the power section. So that's the best way I'm running it. The only time I'm using the power section is if I'm using my wah, whammy, polyphonic octave, and my my bass balls. And I mean, it's doing very well. It sounds really cool. The polyphonic octave I use is a Behringer US 600, and I've been using that now for the last few years, and it's done me very well. It's done me great, and I like this pedal. I was going to get a Boss pitch shifter harmonist pedal, but I couldn't afford it, so I decided to get this one instead. A lot of people give me shit for using an older style whammy, and a lot of people have given me grief about that sort of thing. And a lot of people have said, oh, but you get true bypass and it's got a cleaner sound. I don't like the cleaner sound. I mean, yeah, it saturates nice, and I've played around with the Whammy 5, and I've played around with the Whammy DT as well, and they're both solid pedals, but I just choose not to use them. I just like the glitchiness of the Whammy 4. I mean, the Whammy 4 just has that glitchy sound to it, and I love it. So I've been using this now for the last couple of years. On my previous rig rundown, I mean, not my previous one from 2016, but from my 2013 rig rundown, you'll probably notice that I had a purple expression pedal on there. It was this one's competitor by a company called Moore, and it was called the Super Bender, which sadly you can't get anymore. And it was a great pedal. It was a great pedal, and I loved it. The only minor setback that I did find with it was that if you had it set to I think you had it set to really high, it sounded pretty cool, but at the same time you just lost the octaves once you put the expression down, and you had to really put it down properly. So I noticed with this pedal you don't have that problem, and I mean, after using the Super Bender, you had to really turn it off really quick, or else it'll just totally kill your notes if you cock it back. So that was the problem I found with the Super Bender. The only thing I miss about the Super Bender is the pre-programmable presets that you're able to do with it, which was a good thing. And it was true bypass pedal anyway. But the only problem with the Moore Super Bender V1, I think it was the version 1 that I had, that it didn't have MIDI. And this has got MIDI. This isn't true bypass, but I'm going to get it bypass modded one day. And this pedal is actually a pretty cool pedal. Even still, it's an old one, and it does me great. My wires from my last rig rundown, I think it was 2016, yeah, two years ago coming up. I did a rig rundown when I had this wire, which is a Vox V847. I still got it. It still works perfectly fine, and it sounds reasonably okay, and it's very articulated, but the thing is, it's very squonky, and I'm gonna probably get something changed in this. I'll probably get this rebuilt down the line, but it sounds okay. But I thought I had a problem with this, with the Dunlop 535Q, and I thought I had a problem with it, but turns out that it was just being a bitch. So it was just a minor little glitch with this pedal, but it's now going again. And I like this pedal because it sounds pretty cool. It sounds freaking awesome. I had a true bypass switch put in it because the original switch died. And I also have a blue LED on the side here, if you can, here, it's right here. Actually, I'll turn my pedal board on and I'll show you what I mean. You see, got a blue LED, so I can see it so I can see if it's on or off, on or not. But I had that modded through McPherson Mods. Waylon McPherson, he is a genius. I recommend you to go to him easily. Friendly guy too, and the whole crew there are just friendly. They're great people. I would recommend them to anybody. Then, and the last pedal that goes out to my amp is the Electro Harmonix bass balls, and I only just use it as a spot fill, but it's a aggressive little fucker, ain't it? But it's a good pedal. It's a cool pedal. I like it. And the rest of the pedals, they go up to the back end into the effects loop, and it starts off into the send. Yeah, it sends from the amp to the volume pedal, and the volume pedal I'm using is a Behringer FCB 100. Now, I'm going to say this because people give me shit about using Behringer pedals, and people say that, oh, using Behringer is, you're a cheapskate if you're using Behringer, and they're plastic, and they're fucking disgusting, and they're shit. Well, they can be problematic if they do have a high mortality rate, but if you want a decent sound, yeah, you can go with Boss and all them, and I have a few Boss pedals on my pedal. I have about 4 Boss pedals on my pedal board so far, and they sound really good. I like the Boss pedals, but they're expensive as fuck. Boss is bloody expensive, and unless if you find them second hand, then you can get a decent bargain. But they're expensive, and you don't have to have high-end pedals like a chorus, a rotary, a phaser. Delay you can get away with in some areas, but if it's a pedal that you seldomly use, or just use it as a spot fill, then it's well warranted, and then you can get away with it. If it's a core tone, then you're going to run into a laundry list of problems. You'll probably stand on it too much. You'll probably break the bypass switch inside it. You'll probably crush the damn thing if you're wearing boots. You'll smash it. You'll break it. You can, if you really wanted to, you could easily just gut the pedals out and just put them into another case, and you can label it as a project pedal, and that can be very wise. That can be very justifiable. I was contemplating on doing that, but I just didn't have the time or the patience. But Behringer aren't so bad when you come to think about it. So Behringer aren't too shabby. They aren't shabby, but they aren't too bad. So, they're an okay brand. But anyway, I'm just digressing and raving on a little bit. So anyway, yeah, I've been using the FCB 100 now for quite a while, and the FCB 100 pedal is, it's an expression pedal, and it sounds alright. It sounds good. I only just use it as a volume pedal, but it's sturdy as fuck, man. I must admit, it's done me very well, and I only use it as a kill-off, roll-off, or I use it as I use it as a swell whenever I need it. So it sounds really cool. It sounds really, really awesome, this pedal, and it feels great too. It's got that high angle, which I really like as well, but most volume pedals don't really have, but I like this one, and I recommend anyone to get a FCB 100. Yeah, you can get the ones from Ernie Ball, but Ernie Ball may be nice, and they might be really well and said and good, but they have a cable on them, and the cables can break real quick. So be careful of the cable. But anyway, you can go from here. It goes from here to the Behringer RM600 rotary machine, and I've been using this now for the last few years, and you can hear it on a song called Somewhere Yet So Far Away, and my soon-to-be released song Persuaded in Torment, and you can hear that on this one as well. So you know, it's a cool rotary machine. It's a cool rotary speaker. I mean, I've heard some better ones out there, but this one actually sounds really cool. Then it goes from here to the Boss NS2. And I've had the NS2 now for the last good few years, and I've had it in different configs, and I've had it in different setups. And it sounds really cool. I mean, it sounds really good, and it keeps the signal down to a minimum, and it cleans everything up really nicely. And I like it. And I mean, I got this pedal second hand, so you can see that it's been used, and it's used quite a bit on this pedal, and that stays on quite a lot. So this pedal has done me very well. And then I go from there to the Boss CS3 compression sustainer. I heard that there's a new compressor out by Boss now as well, but this one I've grown accustomed to, and I like the second hand version of this one. I like the second hand ones because they sound used, but they sound nicer. And I have it going past the noise gate, but I'm thinking of shifting it over a little bit. I'm thinking of shifting it at the end of the chain, but obviously it's working there right now, and it's sounding really cool. Then I go from there to the Digitech Bad Monkey, and I've been using this, and I keep that on all the time. And I keep it on because it boosts up my clean tone, and it boosts up my distortion sound as well when I need it. So I like using this pedal quite a bit. Then I go from that to the Boss Metal Zone, or the MT2, which is affectionately called. And people give me shit for using this pedal because everyone assumes automatically that they think that I'm using the MT2 as a main distortion. I'm not. I'm using it as a fuzz. And you know, some people would say, why don't you just use a very aggressive fuzz with a glitch circuit on it or something? I just can't be bothered. I just like using this one just to fuck up my sound, and it sounds really cool. It's got a bit of a hiss to it, but it sounds really cool. And then I go from the Boss MT2 to my main sound, which is the Digitech Death Metal. And a bit of a history lesson with me on the Digitech Death Metal. I've been using the Death Metal now for the last, fucking how long now? For the last 6 years. I mean, for the last 9 years now. And 6 out of the coming up 7 out of the 9 years, I recorded it with J Solo Project, and it's done me great, and it's done me very well, and I like the sound of this pedal. This is a later version I've got. I recorded the first album with the older version of the Death Metal, which was, I think it was a Gen 1, and it was in a heavier case, but it was a nice pedal. And then that died, and then I went to the Boss MT2 for a little bit. Not this one, but it was on my previous setup. I think it was on my 2013 to 2014 setup, and I was using that for ages, and then I didn't like the sound of it because I had to shift my overdrive to the after that, and I was sacrificing a lot. So I was like, okay, I'm going back to the Digitech Death Metal, and just as well served. I haven't missed using the Metal Zone, and I like using the Death Metal better. And like I said, I have more of a 5150 distortion sound, so this one kind of cuts the mustard for me. So then I go from, and how I have my settings set up, I have it set up like my level is at, like, I think it's about just before the 8 o'clock mark, and my low, mids and high are all cranked up, so it gives me that nice sweet sound. Then I go from there to my Behringer CO600 chorus, and yeah, it's a chorus. I don't really use too much chorus in my distortion sound, but I use a lot of it, and I use it as a blend in my clean sound. So in my clean sound, I usually blend the chorus and the flanger, so that does me well. Then from here I go to my flanger, which is the Joyo Classic flanger, and I don't use too much flanger in my sound. I only just use a little bit of it, like in Generation Narcissist. I use it as a spot fill, and I use it a lot of it in my clean sound, and it's pretty cool. Then I go from here to my phaser, and I don't use too much phaser. I only use it for like a trail out, or I use it in some areas, like in a song called Your Corrosion. Then I'll use it, which has the octave parts in that song, which I use a phaser on, and that, I mean, it's a bit of an issue with it at the moment, but it's nothing too rectifiable. But I think it's just because of the power that I'm using on it. But I'm going to be probably replacing that very soon for either like a Electro Harmonix one, or a Boss one, or even the MXR Phase 90. But who knows at this stage. Then I go from here to my tremolo, and I don't use too much tremolo. Which is the Joyo tremolo. I don't use too much tremolo. I only use it when it's necessary. I haven't seen much use for the tremolo. I don't know why I have a tremolo on my pedal board, but suffice to say, it's doing its job at the moment. It's doing what it's doing, in its stride, and it's doing what it's necessarily doing at this stage, and so far so good. Then I go from here to the NUX Time Force, which I use a big bulk of this. Actually, I use this on my slow delays, and on my I use this as more of an analog delay, but I have it set reasonably ambient, for some of my ambient stuff, and it sounds really cool. And it sounds really cool, this pedal. And I have it set to say around about 167 to around about that to 180 BPM, and I have the tail on, so I don't touch the tap tempo. I just have it on and off, but I use it whenever I need to. And for some of the crazy oscillations, I use the Behringer digital delay, the DD400, and people have asked me, why the fuck do I have a peg on it? Sometimes whenever I use this pedal, sometimes I need to have access to it by the foot. So, this pedal is a crazy pedal, but it's a cool pedal. But I'm thinking of getting a proper wing nut, or probably a wing nut knob, so I can actually have better access to it. But I use it for my oscillations, and they're crazy. Then from here, I have my Boss GE7 EQ, and I have it set really high, but the level set. The only time I have the level set really high is if I'm playing live. Like, sometimes I have the level set really high if I'm recording, because I need the volume for my mics, but sometimes I have it set low for practicing, and it usually depends. But it's a cool EQ. I mean, it's noisy as fuck, but it sounds really cool. It's doing very well. And then into the return, and then it goes from here to my Digitech Jamman Express, and I got this pedal given to me by someone I'm not going to mention. I swapped a pedal. I gave him one of my. I had bought two FZV 100s, and I was going to use my pitch, my polyphonic octave as a Digitech whammy before I got the whammy. It didn't work, unfortunately, and I decided, okay, I'm not going to have that in use anymore. So I decided, okay, I'll give it to the dude that I was friends with at the time, and you know, he got a new looper pedal, and he gave me his Jam Man Express, and I use that just for jam ups, and it's not really in use, and I don't really use a looper, but if I ever need to do any you know, jam back stuff, or if I'm doing some solo jam back stuff, then I'll put that into use. The caveat I have with this is that the red light sometimes whops out every once in a while, and I have to tap it to get it going again. But aside from that, it's an okay pedal. I wouldn't mind a bigger one, or I might get the Boss one, but this one does me good. And then it goes out to the return signal of my amp. The power I'm using is a K-Line 5 CP05 power, and it's doing me good. It's done me very well so far. I mean, sorry, my pedal board's a bit dusty. It's done me very well so far. I haven't had any major gripes with it. I might actually get a secondary one, and I might, you know, spread out the the distribution a little bit, just to make the pedal board a little bit more tidier. And I might actually you know, considering that I need to get a second one anyway, it'll be a lot more justifiable. But yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that's my pedal board setup. Let's go through my picks and strings, shall we? Guitar picks, I usually use the Black Ices. I usually use these, but the more I'm playing them, I'm starting to get used to these ones. I don't know why. I hate playing with a grip, but I'm starting to get really acclimated to them. They're a 1.4 Null Pro, and yeah, I'm thinking of going to these. I mean, I've been playing the Black Ices for a very long time now. I've been playing these since 2006, 2015, and they're good. I like them, but you know, I get really wet during my shows, and they slip out of my hands real quick. So I like these ones because they have a point on them, and they're good for articulation too. So you know, the less I have to dig in, the better. So I'm going to probably stick with these ones from now on. I like the Null Pros. I also like the Jazz 3 Jumbos as well, but they wear out very quick, and I tend to lose them. My cables, I mentioned the guitar ones, but the amp ones, but I'm using just the shit that you get from the rock shop, really. Just the cheap pedals, and the patch leads. I think they're the the rock cable by Warwick. And they do their job. They sound alright. Yeah. Strings. On Vix, I'm now starting to play Ernie Ball. I'm slowly making the transition to Ernie Ball. On Vixen and Nixon, I have Ernie Ball 11 to 56, which is cool. On Vixen, I have the Diabolus 13 to 56s, which I have no fucking idea why I went to 13. I like 11s, and they tend to bend better with the 11s. On Scarface, I have the Diabolus 14 to 68s, and I found them a little bit too heavy for my liking. So I'm going back to Ernie Ball. I'm going to go to Ernie Ball. I'm going to probably put a lighter gauge on this one. But like I said, I'm going to be getting another guitar very soon for Drop A, so who knows. And that guitar is cool. On Rust Bucket, I think I mentioned them. Yeah, I had a 26 to 74 custom gauge for the Drop F Sharp. On my bass Firebug, I have 65 to 125. Yeah, 65 to 125 for bass for drop B tuning, and also I'm thinking of going back to 55 to 115 for drop B tuning, and probably 65 to 105 for drop A. I think on this bass at the moment, I think I've only got the 45 to 105s on this one. Straps, I've got two straps. I've got leather straps mainly. I've got a Planet Waves, which I usually play with, which I usually have on Nixon, and I have a Levy's for Vixen, but I'm going to go with mostly Planet Wave stuff for the straps, because they get sweaty, but they look quite dapper when you come to look at it. Cleaning products, yeah, just the usual shit. I try and clean my guitars up as much as possible, but I'm lazy. I try and make it a habit in keeping changing my strings as much as possible, but I don't really need to when I'm recording, because when you're recording, you're lazy. I shouldn't really be lazy when it comes to my guitar strings when I'm recording, because you get better tone from strings when you're recording, but strings are expensive. But yeah, that's basically it. That's basically my entire rig for 2018 and beyond. Things might change down the line. I might actually put some of my effects into a switching system, but who knows at this point. At the moment, I am just a lazy son of a bitch. But anyway, that's my rig. Comment, rate, subscribe. Keep coming back for more content and more updates with J Solo Project. We might come to a town near you. Choice. Alright, cheers all.